Good morning. I hope you are well this morning, or whatever time of the day you're watching this. It's classic. I was just checking to make sure there's no children about and no dogs. And just as I started this recording, the dog starts barking downstairs. But it's, there we are. That's real life. Do you know what? In 1978, I married Sue. Well, she married me as well. It was a mutual thing. And we therefore celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary in 2018. By that time, we'd moved up to Harlow, and we were able to plan some exciting things. We had the wherewithal to travel. So we decided that we would start off a little early, and we actually left England on the day after Boxing Day, December 2017, and flew off to stay with friends in Melbourne in Australia. We stayed with them for about 2 weeks, and then we went on to Queenstown in New Zealand. We flew there one morning and met up with our son, who was working there on the chairlifts, on the ski slopes and all that. And the following day we drove up to the west coast, where we were able to go and see some glaciers. I say to see glaciers, we saw 2 glaciers in one day. It'd be crazy, really. Hopefully, in a second or two, a picture of one of the glaciers will come up on the screen. The picture I want to focus on, and the reason for mentioning all this, is that we had to walk. We had to park the car. It's all very well organised. You park the car in a car park, all free, and then you have to walk, and it's broadcast as a 45-minute walk. Well, it depends who you are and how fast you walk, of course. But Sue and I found ourselves quite late in the afternoon walking up this path with David, and we'd gone about probably about half an hour, and it was clear that we still had a long way to go, but it was also clear that it was actually getting quite dingy, quite not dark exactly, but it was quite late in the afternoon. And it suddenly dawned on us that although we checked the clocks and sunset time and all the rest of it, we were actually in a very dark valley. Glacial valleys are steep-sided. This glacier, whichever you want to pronounce it, has been receding for the last 100 years. And so roughly where we parked the car, just something like 30 years ago, would have been under the ice. But the glacier has now retreated, probably the best part of a mile, and it's not what it used to be, as you might say. But the point being that you're well into the valley before you get anywhere near the glacier. So we'd got around about halfway, and it was beginning to get a bit dim, and we realised that not only, of course, did you have to get there, but you had to get back, and you had to do it in the daylight, because there was absolutely no artificial lighting. This was just a bare valley. What the tourist board had done is prepared quite a good path, and so it was quite easy walking, but it was still not somewhere you'd want to be after dark, really. I think the only light we'd had with us would probably been our phones, the flashlights on our phones. So at a certain point we decided that Dave, who was considerably younger than us obviously, would go off on his own to try and get up as close as he could get to the glacier, and Sue and I would continue at our pace and see how far we could get before we decided to turn around and come back. In the end, Sue and I never actually got up to the face of the glacier. You can't go right up and touch it, as it were, because it's quite dangerous. The glaciers carry a lot of rocks, and these things don't sort of melt nicely and cleanly. They're full of debris and so on, and if you got right up under the front of it, you could easily get hurt if a piece of it fell off or the rocks fall out and so on. So at a certain point they put up barriers and you're not allowed to go any closer. But there is a picture, maybe that will come up shortly, where David got right up as close as you can get, and you can see what I was talking about. But after about an hour's walking, we decided it was time to turn around and come back. And in fact, darkness fell before we got back to the car. So the last few hundred yards, that's all, we were almost in complete darkness. And it started to rain quite heavily, and we had to go as fast as we could, get back to the car. We sat in the car and we were wet. In the meantime, David was nowhere to be seen, and we sat there in a little bit of a, slightly worried, because he'd gone off on his own. Because it was late evening, we're talking about 7 in the evening. We'd only passed about 2 people going up or coming back, and obviously by that time of the day most people have gone home for their dinner, sort of thing. We crammed this in after driving up from Queenstown up to Franz Joseph, and decided to go and see the glacier that evening instead of waiting till the next morning. So it was all a bit hairy, really. But anyway, 20 minutes after we sat in the car and beginning to sort of steam nicely, David reappeared, absolutely drenched to the skin, but very happy because he got up close and personal to a glacier. Why am I rambling on about a glacier? Well, it's not something you see every day, but the point was, the valley was dark, dingy, rocky. It had a path, and guess what verse, of course, popped into my mind even while we were there. Even though I walk through the valley in the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You know that verse as well as I do. Everybody knows that verse. Psalm 23, verse 4. At the point I was probably just wanting to make, apart from boasting about our fabulous holiday that we had, was that sometimes in life you have an experience that really brings home the scriptures to you. It might be a family emergency, it might be an illness. In this case, it was walking through a barren valley. There was some scrubby growth in the bottom of the valley, but it's very rocky. There's no deep soil or anything. It's not a fertile valley we're talking about. The Franz Joseph glacier has scoured out all the good soil, and also because it's very bare, when there's any heavy rain, what was for us quite a pleasant walk and the little stream meandering down through the rocks would become a raging torrent on a stormy winter's day. So the very fact that we were in this valley and it was getting dark, it was a reminder of the valley of the shadow of death. We think of death as darkness closing in, don't we? But thankfully we got out alive, as you can see. So if you fancy going to New Zealand, I would recommend it. Fabulous country, well worth visiting. If you've never seen a glacier and you have the slightest interest in one, Franz Joseph is a pretty good one to see before it melts completely. They reckon in about 30 years it will be all gone. But it's been melting for over 100 years, so is global warming 100 years old, or is it new? I don't know. Who cares? Well, you'll care, but I'm rambling now, so I'm finishing. Have a great day, and I hope you be blessed. Don't forget, even though you might be walking through a dark valley, the Lord is with you. Amen.